Heinz Guderian, the father of Blitzkrieg. His tanks would race ahead, and as is shown here in this map, where you've got France, his most successful battle was in France, where in 10 days or 14 days he managed to get to the Channel ports. The key thing with Heinz Guderian was that he knew that armour needed to race forward and punch a hole in the defences so that it could race across behind the armies and split them up. And that's exactly what he did in the invasion in the West. But of course, we're going to refer to his book, produced in 1952, and it's his diaries of all his battles, and it's extensive in detail. So he says here, the Army High Command, spurred on by Hitler to mount an offensive, was intending to use once again the so-called Schnitten Plan of 1914. That would be to invade through Belgium, Holland, and into France from the north. But thoughts soon turned to an alternative solution. And that was on one day in November, Manstein asked me to come and see him and outlined his ideas on the subject to me. These involved a strong tank thrust through southern Belgium and Luxembourg towards Sedan, a breakthrough of the where the Maginot Line ends and where there's a space, splitting them in two, so that the whole French front would be separated, and while the Allies, the French, German and Belgian and Dutch forces would advance through France towards Belgium, this tank attack would come in behind them and cut them off at the Channel ports. That was the idea. Manstein wrote his memorandum for approval to Colonel General von Rundstedt. It was sent to the Army High Command on the 4th of December 1939. Meanwhile, an aeroplane accident compelled our masters to abandon the Schnitten Plan. A Luftwaffe officer courier who, contrary to standing orders, was flying by night with important papers containing the references to the Schnitten Plan operation. He crossed the Belgian border and was compelled to make a forced landing on Belgian soil. No one knows what happened to him. It's assumed that the Belgians, the French and the British knew all about our operation. So, when Manstein reported to Hitler, on assuming command of his corps, he took the opportunity to express his views on the forthcoming operations. This resulted in the Manstein Plan, now becoming an object of serious study. A war game took place at Koblensk on the 7th of February 1940. It seemed to me decisive in its favour. During the course of this map exercise, I proposed that on the 5th day of the campaign an attack be made with strong armoured and motorised forces to force a crossing of the River Meuse near Sedan, with the objective of achieving a breakthrough which would then be expanded towards Amiens and the Channel coast. The Chief of the Army General Staff, Hadler, who was present, pronounced the idea as senseless. The situation became even tenser when it became clear that not even Colonel General von Rundstedt had any idea about the potentiality of tanks and declared himself in favour of a more cautious solution using infantry. Eventually it was settled that my Panzer Corps should be used to van the attack through the Ardennes. I settled down to busily train my generals and my staff. General von Kleist and myself in the Reichschancellery met Hitler. Each of the generals outlined what his task was and how he intended to carry it out. I was the last to speak. My task was as follows. On the day ordered, I would cross the Luxembourg frontier, drive through southern Belgium towards Sedan, across the Meuse and establish a bridgehead on the far side so that the infantry corps following behind could get across. I explained briefly that my corps would advance through Luxembourg and southern Belgium in 3 columns. I reckoned on reaching the Belgian frontier posts on the first day and hoped to break through them on the same day. On the second day, by the 5th day, I was hoping to actually be at Sedan. Hitler then, he was the first person who had thought to ask me this vital question. He says, and what do you plan to do when you've got across the River Meuse? I said, unless I receive orders to the contrary, I intend on the next day to continue my advance westward as far as I can go. Hitler nodded and said nothing else. All my decisions were to reach the Atlantic seaboard at Abbeville and would take me there. The Supreme Commander's influence on my actions was merely was restrictive throughout. So the General Staff. The combined Anglo-French forces in the West in May 1914 disposed of 4,000 armoured vehicles. The German army had about 2,800, including armoured reconnaissance cars. And when the attack was launched, only 2,200 were available for the operation. So we faced superiority in numbers, to which was added the fact that the French tanks were superior to the German ones, both in armour and the gun calibre, though admittedly inferior in control functions, that's the radio, and the speed. Ta-da. By the evening of May the 12th, the 1st and the 10th Panzer Divisions had occupied the southern bank of the Meuse and had captured the historic city fortress of Sedan. The night was spent in making final preparations for the assault and moving the corps and the Panzer group within making a crossing. So the key was to make the crossing and get across the Meuse and have a bridgehead. At 15:30 hours, I went through French shell fire to an advanced artillery position of the 10th Panzer Division in order to personally observe the efforts of my artillery and the Luftwaffe's contribution. At 1600 hours, the battle began with a display of artillery fire which, to us at least, seemed magnificent. Tensely, I waited for the Air Force. It arrived right on time. But my astonishment was great to see only a few squadrons of bombers and dive bombers under fighter cover. They adopted the tactics which we had discussed earlier. I was also now anxious to take part in the assault of the Meuse with the riflemen. So I joined them and rode across the canoes of the Meuse with them. The attack by the 1st Rifle Regiment and by the Infantry Regiment, GD, was developing as though it were being carried out as a manoeuvre. The French artillery was almost paralysed by the unceasing threat attacks by Stukas and bombers. The concrete emplacements along the Meuse had been put out of action by anti-tank and anti-aircraft artillery. The enemy machine gunners were forced to keep down by the fire of our heavy weapons and artillery. Despite the open nature of the ground, our casualties remained light. By the time night fell, a considerable penetration of the enemy's defences had been made. The troops had been ordered to keep up the attack without pause throughout the night, and I could rely on this important order being obeyed. Once the advance elements of the 2nd Panzer Division and reconnaissance battalion and the motorcycle together with the heavy artillery, had been in action, with such a few troops they had succeeded in forcing a crossing. The whole of the 1st Panzer Division was thrown across. Now we had a bridgehead. Early on the 14th of May, the brave Panzer Division signalled that they had managed to increase their penetration considerably during the night, and we were now through to Kemery. So off to Kemery I went. I saw thousands of prisoners on the banks of the Meuse, French prisoners. Contrary to expectations, the 1st and 2nd Panzer Divisions received orders immediately to change direction with all their forces and to cross the Ardennes Canal and to head west with the objective of breaking clear through the French defences and into the French countryside. Contrary to the expectations, the night was one of confusion. That's the next, not owing to the activity of the enemy, but on account of our command difficulties with OKH. Panzer Group von Kleist ordered a halt to all further advance and to an extension of the bridgehead. I neither would or could agree with these orders, which involved the sacrifice of the element of surprise. He wanted them to wait for more troops to come up. Finally, I explained to him that the attack was already in progress, and so eventually General von Kleist approved of the advance being continued for another 24 hours. This enabled me to break out from the bridgehead and head into the countryside. The troops were overtired, having had no real rest since the 9th of May. It was now the 12th. Ammunition was running low. The men on the front line were falling asleep in their trenches. Balek, their commanding officer in a wind jacket and a knotty stick in his hand, told me that the capture of the village had only succeeded because he said, "In that case, you stay here and I'll take the place on my own." The moment their commander moved off to fight, they all got up and followed him. His dirty face and red-rimmed eyes shows that he had spent a hard day and a sleepless night. For his doings on that day, he was to receive the Knight's Cross, and we were ready to go. Now, on the previous day, we captured a French order originating from General Gamelin himself, which said the torrent of German tanks must be stopped. This order strengthened me and my conviction that the attack must be pressed forward with all possible strength, since the defence capabilities of the French was obviously causing their high command serious anxiety. At this time, we were rapidly heading across the French countryside towards our objective. The fog of war that had confused us soon lifted. We were in the open now, with the results were rapidly to be seen. I found the first General Staff Officer of the 2nd Panzer Division and told him what the position was and from where to go. On his drive, I passed an advancing column of the 1st Panzer Division. The men were wide awake now and aware that we had achieved a complete victory, a breakthrough. They cheered and shouted remarks, which often could only be heard by the staff officers in the second car. "Well done, old boy," and "There's our old man," and "Did you see him? That was hurrying Heinz," and so on. All of this was indicative of a great potential victory. Early on the 17th of May, I received a message from the Panzer Group. The advance was to be halted at once, and I was personally to report to General von Kleist, who would come to see me at my airstrip at 0700 hours. He was there punctually. He did not even wish me good morning and began in very violent terms to berate me for having disobeyed orders. "I told you 24 hours, and Guderian just rushed forward, just kept going. I asked if I might be relieved of command, and he says that is fine. I then got a message from von Ronston, and he informed me that I must not resign my command and explained that the order to halt the advance from the Army High Command and therefore must be obeyed. Then he said he quite understood my reasons, however, for wishing to get on with it and advance, and therefore, with the Army Group's approval, he ordered. He says you can do reconnaissance in force, which must be carried out. So this enabled me to continue my advance. So I did reconnaissance in force. So I need to not communicate with my staff by wireless, and my orders could therefore not be monitored by the wireless intercepts of OKH or OKW. So he was able to continue. And where did he get? He got to the Channel coast. It says here, on the 21st of May, during that night, the Spitter platoon of the 2nd Panzer Division passed through Noyelles, and thus the first German unit to reach the Atlantic coast. On the evening of this remarkable day, we did not know what direction our advance should continue, nor had Panzer Group von Kleist received any instructions concerning further prosecution of our offensive. So the 21st of May was wasted while we waited for orders. On the 24th, we were given strict orders from Hitler. The Supreme Command intervened in the operation in progress, with results that were most disastrous influence on the whole future course of the war. Hitler ordered the left wing to stop. It was forbidden to cross the stream towards Dunkirk. We were not informed the reason why. The order contained the words, "Dunkirk is to be left to the Luftwaffe. Should the capture of Calais prove difficult, the port can also be left to the Luftwaffe." We made sure we took Calais and its garrison after, despite fight with the British, who refused to surrender. So in Calais, for the first time since the 17th of May, I met General von Kleist, who expressed his appreciation for the achievements of my troop. On this day, we attempted once again to attack towards Dunkirk and close the ring about the sea fortress, but renewed orders to halt arrived. We were stopped within sight of Dunkirk. We watched the Luftwaffe attack. We saw the armada of great and little ships by means of which the British were evacuating their forces. In reflection, the operation could have been completed much more quickly had Supreme Headquarters not kept ordering Army Corps to stop, and thus hindered its rapid and successful advance. What the future course of the war would have been if we'd been successful at the time in taking the British expeditionary force prisoner at Dunkirk is now impossible to guess. In any event, a military victory on that scale would have offered a great chance for capable diplomats. Unfortunately, the opportunity was wasted owing to Hitler's nervousness. The reason he subsequently gave for holding back my corps, that the ground in Flanders with its many ditches and canals was not suited to tanks. A poor one. On May the 26th, I was anxious to express my gratitude to the brave troops under my command. This took the forms of the following corps. For 17 days we have fought through Belgium and France. We have covered 400 miles since the crossing of the German border and had reached the Channel coast and the Atlantic Ocean. On the way here you have thrust through the Belgian fortifications, forced a passage of the Meuse, broken the Maginot Line, extended the memorial battle of Sedan, captured the important heights of Sedan, and without halt fought your way through all the way to Amiens and Abbeville. You have set the crowns of your achievements by the capture of the Channel coast and of the sea fortresses of both Boulogne and Calais. There'll be another video that will reflect on Heinz Guderian's conclusions about this particular state of this great victory, and also Sir Winston Churchill is reviewed as well. Thank you all. So he definitely proved himself to be an architect of a new type of war, the kind of war that the Americans copied, didn't they, in Iraq? Thank you once again.